Hello, everyone. Welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and I'm here to review the Doctor Who Series 2, Season 15, whatever you want to call it, premiere, The Robot Revolution, the beginning of the second season of Ncuti Gatwa's run as the 15th Doctor on Doctor Who. So, before getting into this, I just want to acknowledge that I'm recording this review hours after learning of the passing of Jean Marsh, who portrayed Sarah Kingdom in very early Doctor Who. And, what happened with that character, and it was quite a shock in the show. And now she's passed away, the actress, at the age of 90. So she certainly had a long life, but just ought to be sure to pay respects to her. So, gone but not forgotten. But getting to this episode, The Robot Revolution aired April 12th, 2025. So, kind of kicking off a week of basically, doctor birthdays. You have Peter Davison's birthday, Peter Capaldi as well, David Tennant, David Bradley, and David Tennant. So it kind of feels like a week of Doctor Who ish occasions. And of course, they probably wanted this season to premiere Easter weekend. I'm sure that factored into it. But this begins with a flashback to 17 years prior to when the main story takes place. So I guess it'd be about 2008. And we see the new character, new companion to be um, Belinda Chandra. And, portrayed by the same actress who played the character in Boom back in the previous season, portrayed by Varada Sethu. And we knew going in that there would be a connection, and they do go into that a bit here, like way later on in the episode. Before I get into the, heavy spoilers, just off the top, I thought this was a really good episode. It wasn't like super mind blowing or groundbreaking, but there were some twists that were interesting and a couple puns here and there that I quite liked, but also kind of groaned at. And I'm kind of a pun enthusiast, I guess you could say. I incorporate a lot of puns in my own novels. But yeah, if you don't believe me, go ahead and read the Standalones and Stepping Stones novels. But yeah, I thought this was a solid premiere. And from what I can tell, it seems like people, Doctor Who fans online, for what little I've seen anyway, seem generally happy with this episode. So, getting into the story, we see Belinda with her boyfriend Alan, who reveals that he has named a star after her. And I imagine this would be kind of an interesting transition watch if one were to go through the show and watch this directly after Joy to the World, with the way that that ends, with the star related thing that happens there with Joy. And, we get this scene, and there was a moment where Alan says something like, "Come on, kiss me," and it feels awkward in the moment, but it kind of breadcrumbs foreshadowing what happens way later. Like in hindsight, it's like, okay, it felt off, and there's a reason for that. So it flashes forward to 17 years later. I suppose Belinda is in her 30s at this point. It's May 24th, 2025, which is that when the season finale is going to air for this current season? Um, I suspected that maybe it was because that's a Saturday, right? I don't know. Someone can correct me on that. They do love to incorporate some real dates pertaining to air dates once in a while into these things. But she is a nurse, and people have been saying that she feels like, people, as in Doctor Who fans, have been saying that Belinda kind of feels like a copy and paste of Martha Jones. Martha worked in the medical field, and before her was Rose, and people were saying that Ruby feels kind of like a Rose copy and paste. And while there are definitely parallels, I do appreciate that there are also differences. Neither of these companions are in love with the Doctor like the ones in the first Russell T Davies era were. And this one, as we see later in the episode, a bit more challenging and confrontational against the Doctor. So, not quite the same thing as some of the other companions. But we see the Doctor investigating at this hospital. He accidentally turns the lights out when getting information from a computer. And eventually, these robots, they find a Belinda, and there's this really shocking moment where they threaten her. They are like, "You need to come with us," and she's basically like, "Or what'll happen?" And they shoot at something off screen, and then it cuts to like the outline or the dust outline of a cat, and it's like, what the hell? You didn't need to kill off a cat in the show. Like, that's like, I don't know. I know there are some dark things that happen in Doctor Who, but for some reason, this thing that happened with the cat felt so out of place. I really could have done without it. And I know you also see people getting uh, blasted as well, and that effect is kind of creepy because when they get blasted, it feels like a freeze frame, and they turn into what looks kind of like an X-ray of a skeleton. And I feel like that it kind of works that it doesn't feel so seamless, those effects. It kind of feels like it fits well with the, I don't know, some of the campiness of some of the effects of the classic series. So I thought that the effect worked pretty well, but yeah, I'm definitely like not over what happened to the cat. And so Belinda is brought into this spaceship, and she's saying all these things, talking about, um, at some point she brings up her ex-boyfriend Alan. He disappeared a year after the star certificate thing, and the certificate is part of this plot as well. And I assume you've seen the episode if you're watching this because it's full of spoilers. But when they arrive at this planet, there are a few prisoners slash rebels, and of course the Doctor is among them. And he tells her a story and basically reveals that these robots are faulty, and every ninth word in a, I guess, spoken dialogue is not detected by them. And I feel like you could kind of poke holes in this because it's like, when does it count? Does it have to be whenever these words are said within a certain time frame? Like, what happens if someone speaks 5 words and then like 20 seconds later they speak 5 more? Like, what's, I don't know. I feel like I'm thinking too granularly about this, but I'm kind of curious about the mechanics about this. And it's also kind of fortunate that Belinda or anyone could catch on to this, because I know if I were in this position, just would not be able to catch on, and maybe I'd slip up, make a mistake when trying to speak secretly. But we do see like she counts with her fingers, so that helps. And the prisoners, they rebel, and we learn about one of them, Sasha. I guess she and the Doctor have been good friends for about 6 months. 6 months that happened off screen in between scenes, and they make a big deal about her. And when she gets killed, the Doctor, you really see how much it hurts him, because you could see that this was a good friend of his and that he made. And the Doctor often feels guilty about, whenever there are these situations where people under his care or people that he knows die in these situations that he is involved in. Um, Me and my friend were rewatching Rogue right before watching this episode, and there were shades of that when he thought that Ruby was a goner. And we also like rewatched Boom after this one, because obviously because of the connection with the Descendant. But anyway, um, yeah. So and again, Gatua really great at expressing the pain and torment that the Doctor is feeling in these sorts of moments. And Belinda really wants it to stop as well. They're followed by this cleaning robot thing, which kind of becomes a little joke device, like kind of a little joke in the episode, but is also really important to the plot in that the bigger robots are able to track its location. And eventually, I have mixed feelings about Belinda's decision to do this, to turn that cleaning robot back on so that she can be tracked. It's like, why not do that when you're away from all these other people? But what ends up happening is really fascinating. And you have all this stuff about this AI generator. There's this big machine. It's presented as a big machine, and there's talk of Belinda, who's seen as like the queen, how she has to marry this AI generator, and they mention like welding, and so I'm thinking to myself, oh, is this basically inspired by a joke that I heard in The Office of like, when Michael Scott is at a wedding and he does a Webster's dictionary joke is like reading the definition of welding instead. Like, did something like that or that episode itself, were those the inspiration for this episode? I'm very curious about that. Maybe the info is already out there and I just don't know. But yeah, it was a pun that I noticed and I thought was kind of clever, but also kind of groan worthy. But it doesn't just stop there, as we learn that AI, it actually is Al, and in real life we often, well, as in my experience anyway, misread AI and Al, like get them mixed up sometimes depending on the context, and it's really annoying. But here it's Al as an Alan, and he's kind of a cyborg looking thing, not a Cyberman. This very well could have been a Cyberman episode if he made some tweaks, but we see so much of them that I'm actually glad that this was something different. And again, I do appreciate the wordplay and whatnot. But yeah, they really wear it on their sleeves how this is an anti incel episode. I think Belinda even says Planet of the Incels. Alan was very controlling and wanted to manipulate her, and even showing that he was a gamer back in the late 2000s, I guess it would be. So it's like, oh, I guess Russell T really hates gamers, huh? Um, and when me and my friend were rewatching Rogue, I thought to myself, I wonder if he really hates cosplayers because of the. But yeah, he probably doesn't. But it's kind of funny to read it that way. Some gamers are definitely terrible, and some are not. But incels are definitely a huge concern. There's no room for toxic masculinity and toxic fans or anything like that. Just really terrible, those types of people. And we get this thing that happens, this time related thing where Al and Belinda are each holding the star certificate. It's the exact same certificate, and she has the two certificates touch, interact, so that it creates this. I don't know if you would call it an explosion or blast, but there's this very surreal effect that happens, pretty psychedelic, and we see that through that effect, the Doctor is able to get to know Belinda by seeing her life, basically from when she was a child to now, from what I understand, which has kind of a parallel to Clara. When the 11th Doctor was trying to investigate who the Impossible Girl was, and trying to find out more about Clara. So I do wonder if there's some inspiration from that arc here. And Alan is turned into less than a baby, like very microscopic, I guess I should say. And I could see people being grossed out by the idea of this. And, it's there just for the joke of like the cleaning robot, just, I guess, uh, getting rid of Alan or what's left of him or whatever. But I was really surprised that they threw that in there, and I'm not really sure. But anyway, Alan is gone, and Belinda goes with the doctor to the TARDIS, and he does this DNA test, and we see her descendant, the soldier who was in the episode Boom, and of course, same actress. And we get this back and forth between them. The doctor is calling her to adventure, but she is not so sure about him. You gotta look at it from her perspective. And, the doctor has seen her life up to this point, so he probably feels like he could be buddy buddy with her. And I did wonder if maybe it was a bit of a cheat to have him get to know her through those means. Because I know in the previous season, I saw people here and there saying they couldn't buy into how good friends Ruby and the Doctor were because they want to see more of that development. But I was bought into that, so like I wasn't sure what people meant. So I kind of wondered if this was in response to that. But I think it's more to feed into this dynamic of Belinda. The doctor, again, it's kind of like Clara, where he was basically kind of being like a stalker, looking up info about her and her life and whatnot. And that can be really scary. Like he knows a lot about Belinda, but she doesn't know a lot about him. Like, who is this guy? He could be creepy, he could be dangerous. And she even points out that he took a DNA test on her without asking, and he probably thought, oh, is just oh, let's just do this thing. Let me show you this, and being all charming and stuff. But we are really reminded that the Doctor is sometimes, very shady. With the Seventh Doctor, people talk about how manipulative he was, and with the 11th Doctor, it's, you could argue they're shades of that too, with how shady he is. But yeah, that can be traced through different parts of the Doctor's life, I guess you could say. And it's kind of a reminder that even though when the 15th Doctor debuted, we thought that this was a Doctor who's past all of his previous problems as previous lives had. Evidently, in this moment and in the previous season, we see that he's still not over some things. He is still grappling with being the last of the Time Lords again. The revelation of being adopted and not knowing who his real family is. Or, like original biological family, I guess I should say. Because, real family kind of sounds, I don't know, it feels off for me to word it like that. But I think y'all know what I mean. And here, like, he's, old habits die hard. And I think that's also something I kind of explored with the 13th Doctor. Her first season felt like a reset, and then in her second season, we're reminded, oh, she keeps secrets from the companions, and it's like, okay, yeah, they're reminding us that the Doctor is not completely past certain things. But it makes for an interesting dynamic here, as she is able to call out the Doctor on some things, and there have been instances where other companions have done that now and then. But she really wants to be taken home, and he obeys that wish, or at least tries to, but then apparently May 24th, 2025 is blocked. Like, they can't get to it. And I kept wondering, well, can't they just go a day before or a day after? And maybe Russell T thought of this. Maybe it'll be explained later, but it would have been nice to have an explanation, like, uh, in the moment. But I don't know. It's just a little thing, but I'm sure there's probably some reason for why they can't. Um, maybe if they were to get to the 23rd, once it gets toward midnight, they'd be prevented from getting to the next day or something. Maybe if they go the day after, um, they. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's something I hope gets. I don't know. Maybe the novelization of the episode will cover. I don't know. And we zoom out from the TARDIS in space and see the remnants of, you would assume, human civilization. Like, there's a wrecked car, there's a Statue of Liberty, but I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not fully convinced. I mean, obviously the Earth's not like gonna get destroyed or whatever, but I do kind of wonder if maybe these could be from some sort of replica of Earth. Like, some other planet could have copied the style of at least Americans, or yeah, cars are from other countries, but the Statue of Liberty is in the US. But yeah, maybe some other planet could have replicated the look of some things from Earth, and this could be the remnants of a different planet. I don't know. That's just my out there speculation. I could be wrong. Um, and I even speculated that Belinda could become a star during that star certificate scene, until I was reminded that, oh yeah, that actually already happened in Joy to the World. Never mind. But yeah, I guess we'll see. This really sets the tone, really shows us the dynamic of this new Doctor companion duo, kind of a reluctant companion. So, very curious to see how this unfolds and where things go from here. So, I think overall I'd give this one an 8 out of 10. Um, it didn't have quite as much gravitas as some other things I would rate higher, but it was still really solid, really good season opener. And I had my nitpicks here and there, but yeah, I thought it was good, and very excited for this season of Doctor Who. All right, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and I'll see you all soon.